Hello everyone, I've had a lot of people ask me about this tutorial idea before, which is creating user accounts as an admin. So just the ability to create new users in a dashboard and update their roles. It's a pretty standard thing, pretty beginner friendly, but I think a lot of people mess up with like the password confirmation. So today I thought I would just go through and sort of cover how to do this. It's going to be a pretty quick tutorial though, hopefully. So let's go ahead and let's CD out of here and do a Rails new video, and then CD into it and run a code dot. So the reason why I'm covering this is, I guess, twofold. One, I think a lot of people don't understand password confirmations required for creating accounts. And I think a lot of people also just probably could use a little bit more exposure with you know, some of these topics, like an admin dashboard and like the user account roles and stuff. So we'll just go ahead and we'll do this real quick. To get started, we're going to add Devise. We're then going to run our Rails G Devise :install command, just like we always do to add Devise. We can then do a Rails G Devise user command. And finally, we want to do a Rails G migration, and we want to do a migration to add role to users where the role is of type integer. This will allow us to create an enum in our app models user.rb. So the reason why this is important is because the enum is going to give us some helper methods where we can check if a user is an admin, and we can also change from standard to admin pretty quickly. So that takes care of that aspect of it. Let's go ahead and let's do a Rails G controller pages home real quick to generate a home page. And then let's do a Rails G Rails G controller admin, and we'll give it an index action as well, just so that we can have that. Now let's do a Rails S to start our server, and then come over to our config and our routes.rb file. In here, what we want to do is change the root to be the pages controller home action, just like that. So we change it to root from get and the / to a hash. And then in our routes, we also want to do effectively this. We'll move our admin down here. We also want a post for our create action, and we're going to want a patch for our update action. So we post to admin/users, which goes to the admin controller create action, which we still have to create. And we patch or update at admin update. And we pass in the user ID right here. Now, all three of these can, of course, be condensed by just saying resources for admin and only do it for the index, create, and update methods. So that's similar. It's ultimately up to you which one you want to use. I'm going to stick with the resources here, which means I'm going to have to do a little bit of refactoring, but that's okay. We're going to come over to our admin controller. In our index action, before I forget, I want to create the @users, which is going to be the user.all. And then I want to do a @user equals a user.new, because we'll be creating new users on the user index page. We can then come over to our pages and our home page. And in our home page, what we want to do is render that usual sign in, sign out workflow. So we check if the user signed in. If they are, we want to give them the ability to log out by going to destroy user session path. We pass in a turbo method of delete inside of our data because we're using Rails 7, and this is how you have to do a log out button now. We then do a sign in and sign up button that take us to the respective paths. Finally, we can do a check in here where we can say, let's do a link to the admin dashboard, which will take us to the admin _index_path, I think. And we'll say, or maybe it's just the admin path. It might just be, well, let's just leave it as the admin path. And then we want this to be if the current _user dot admin ? So we'll only display this if the current user is an admin. We can now come over to our application and we'll run our pending migrations. We'll go over to localhost support 3000, click sign up, type in our user account with a password of password. And now we're good. We see the current user is not an admin, of course. If we come over to our user ID, we see that we need to change the user to an admin of 1. A quick and dirty way to do this is come over to your pages controller. Actually, there's two ways. You could just do like current _user.admin ! And then just refresh the page. This would also work. Or you can just run a console here. Save this and refresh. This will open up a Rails console. You can then do a current _user.admin in here and set it like that as well. And then you can just comment out this console whenever you're done with it. But okay, now that we're in admin, let's go over to the admin dashboard. It works just fine, which is our admin index path. Now on our admin dashboard, we want to create that form and display our users, right? So for displaying our users, we're going to come down here. We'll say at users.each do user, because again, in our admin controller, we have this at user set up. And then in here, what we want to do is say for each of these users, we want to create a form, just like this. And we can do an end right here. Say form for the user we're iterating through. The URL is the admin user path. This might need to change because of our resources. We then have a remote of true and a method of patch. In this thing, what we want to do is start by just putting in the user email. You could, of course, make this a form as well so that you could update this. Well, I guess I can show it, right? We can just say f dot, user, or f dot email, something like that. And then you can do a dash, and then you can say f dot checkbox for admin. But this isn't how we want to do this. Instead, we want to use a select box for a role, which is going to be a little bit more involved. So bear with me. But what this is going to look like is it's going to be a f.select for the role. We're going to do the user.roles.keys.map, which is really confusing. But basically what this does is it goes through each of our admins, or our user enums for the roles. And it says for the role that is a 0 by default, we want to call role.humanize, which will translate that to standard. And if you select standard in the dropdown, it'll pass back a value of 0, which is what we used. And then if you're an admin, this will be 1. Then they'll call one.humanize, which will translate this to admin in the select box, but it'll pass back the 1 so that Rails can still update it. And then back here, we have an f.submit for the update button. So let's go ahead and let's save this, come over here and refresh, and we'll run into the admin user path issue because we don't know what this route is. Easy way to check this is come over to localhost port 3000 /rails/info/routes. And then in here, you can search for your specific path. I'm going to search for admin. We can see here that the admin path here for patch and put is what we need. So we need to go over to the admin path and not the admin user path. So we can do this, come over here and refresh. And now we can see undefined method email because this needs to be a f.text_field for the email. I don't know what's going through my brain right now. And now we can see this is our admin user right here. So we can go ahead and change our email if we want to. We'll say test@case.com, click update, but nothing will happen. So you can see down here it tries, but of course, if we come over to our admin controller, we don't have anything set up in here yet. Now, let's come back to our admin page real quick though, because we also want to set up the form for a new user account, which we'll just do up here. You could, of course, abstract this out into a partial, but for the sake of this video, I'm just going to leave everything in this page and you can clean this up however you want. For this, we need to do a form. Let's actually change this to be a form with the model, which will be at user. And then we'll do this to the, we'll just leave this auto completed, the admin index path, and the method of post. We'll give it a email field, a f.select for the role, which will work just like the one down here. We'll then give it a password and a password confirmation. And this is important field because we want to use both of those. We'll come over here and we'll refresh. And now we can see both of these forms and the stuff down here is working just fine. So now let's come over to our admin controller to finish up this tutorial real quick. In the admin controller, there's going to be 3 before actions. We're going to do a before action to set the user for the update method, a before action to authenticate the user, and a before action to authorize the user. Authenticate user is provided by Devise. The authorize user will create down here, authorize admin. I'm going to change this to be an exclamation mark, so it's a bit more consistent. We'll do authorize admin, which will redirect to the root path unless the current user is an admin, just like that. Next, we need the user params because we have a form that we're creating users with. We need a user params just like we always do. That just allows us to make sure that we're only getting the parameters we want for the email, password confirmation, and role specifically for a user. And finally, we want to do the set user, which we're using for the update method right here by calling at user.find whatever. Okay, so now let's do the create and the update actions. The create action is pretty standard. At user equals user.new, pass in these user params for the email and stuff. And if that works, redirect to the admin path and say it worked. If it doesn't, redirect back and say it doesn't or it didn't work. Similarly, for the update, same thing, at user.update, pass in the user params and then redirect. We can go in here and refresh, and now we can try this. So let's come in here, let's say test@case.com. We'll select the role of standard, give it a password of password, and hit create user. You can see here that created the test.case.com account just fine. Let's go ahead and let's change the test.case to john@doe.com. Click update, and that also works just fine. Now if we refresh, that's fine. We can also change them to an admin account. And if I come over here and I change myself to be a standard account, I get redirected because I no longer have access to the admin dashboard, and I also can't see the link here. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all I wanted to cover. This is something that I get a lot of questions about. I might have even covered this before. I can't remember at this point. It's been like 400 videos. Anyways, that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully this was informative and helpful, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.